As a producer, I've always wondered how some artists are able to write so many new ideas, finish songs so quickly, and release so much music. It took me a few years to realize it, but I learned it all comes down to how they have things organized within the software they use. I use Ableton 11, and it is filled with so many cool features that you can customize and tailor exactly to your liking. And I'll be honest, if you're not using Ableton's organization features, their templates, their collections, all this cool stuff I'm gonna go over, you're putting yourself at a serious disadvantage. The difference between a producer who can start and finish a song in just a few hours and those who take days and weeks really comes down to how they have things organized within the DAW. So today I'm going to be showing you 6 key features that you need to be taking advantage of in Ableton 11 to take your workflow to the next level. I'm also going to be giving away my Ableton template, the exact template I use when I start tracks with all my settings, presets, effects, all that. I'm going to be giving that away to everyone in my Patreon community for free, so if you want to learn more about that, there's a link down below. Now, real quick, guys, before we get into the video, if you enjoy this kind of content, if you like learning about how to take your music and your workflow to the next level, I would really appreciate it if you drop a thumbs up on this video, and I don't know, maybe even drop a subscribe, because I'm going to be dropping way more content just like this, just for you in the very near future. Okay, feature number 1 that you need to be taking advantage of is the templates within Ableton 11. Ableton 11 allows you to have a variety of templates. It's actually listed right here, and you have all these different templates you can create. I've saved a bunch of different templates over time based on how I wanted to start these tracks. But basically, this template, the one that you have set to your default template, is what opens up when you decide to start a new project within Ableton. So for my default template, I know that I'm always going to have a few of the same groups. I'm going to have a drum group, I'm going to have a kick, I'm going to use a drum rack, and I'm going to have another group with all my percussion, a lot of audio channels, maybe even a drum rack in here. I'm going to have certain processing on it. On top of that, I'm going to have a bass group. I'm going to be doing certain processing on that bass group. Same with synths, vocals, FX. I know I'm going to be doing a sidechain. So I have my sidechain default settings right here. All this stuff is plugged in and ready to go. So right away, I can start producing and start putting my ideas together. I mean, imagine if you're an artist trying to finish your portrait. You're not wondering where your pastels are or where that one brush is. You have everything perfectly organized. Same if you're a chef in a New York restaurant. You're getting ready for Saturday night dinner. You're not, starting to chop the onion then or wondering where the garlic is. Everything is perfectly organized, all set up so that when you want to create, everything is as streamlined as possible. This is why organization is so key, and it is essential to having a streamlined workflow as a producer. So by using this template, I'm saving myself so much time. The time that it would take to drop a drum rack in, the time that it would take to create a sidechain trigger, add a sidechain compressor, do those settings, set up another audio track for a reference track. All this stuff, I'm saving myself hours each week. For example, if I wanted to put a track together right now, find my kick, find a top loop, find a bass, plug in a few MIDI notes, and then before you know it, I'm already able to start putting an idea together. So your default template is what will hold all of these cool features and customizations that we're about to go over in the next steps. But once you get your default template set up, all you'll want to do is go to File, Save Live Set as Template, and it will save right here in your template folder. And like I said, if you want to get this template and use it to follow along with the rest of the tutorial, there is a link down below for you to do that. All right, feature number 2 is default audio and default MIDI channel settings. So you'll notice as I open a new audio channel or MIDI channel, they automatically have a few plugins on them, a few Ableton audio effects that I know I'm going to have on every audio channel. Number 1, an EQ. I know I'm going to want to EQ whatever sound I put on there, whether that's just removing some low end, harsh frequencies, whatever it is. Secondly, I know I'm going to want a utility, probably to manage the stereo width and also to manage the volume. And lastly, a tuner, especially for some of these samples. I want to know what key the sample is in. Sometimes samples are improperly labeled, so I want to make sure I'm understanding exactly where it sits along the musical scale. I would recommend these 3 audio effects in Ableton as a good starting point for your channels. And once you have the plugins on there that you want on your default channel, you just right click and save as default audio track or save as default MIDI track. For MIDI, if you're using piano on almost every MIDI track to start, or a ton of Serum, you can add that on here and save that as a default MIDI track. And what this does, once again, it just saves me these little bits of time that I would need to search for an EQ, add that, search for a utility, add that, search for a tuner. And those little bits of time add up a ton and it just removes friction from the whole creative process. Feature number 3 you need to be customizing is Ableton's default audio effect settings. So for example, I love using Ableton Saturator, but by default, it doesn't look like this. it looks more like this, and it's not actually doing anything. And I didn't like that because when I added, I already want to be, I know I'm going to be doing saturation, so why don't I just have it already doing some saturation when I drop it on? So I changed it a bit to my liking, right-clicked it, and save as default preset. So that anytime I add one, that's what it looks like. I also customized the reverb. You know, the reverb had some things I didn't like. I don't think it was set to high quality. The delay time was a bit different, so I customized this one. I try and customize all of them to be more in line with how I use them rather than just how Ableton set them up by default. So like I said, anytime you want to customize one of these, change the settings to your liking and just save as default preset. And next time you drop a reverb on there, it'll have your settings. Going off that, you guys should also be saving your processing racks. So for example, say I create a processing rack I like that has some saturator, some glue compressor, some multi-band compression. Say I like adding this to all of my bass groups. What I can do is rename it Mysteria Bass Processing, and then hit this little save button. Boom. And now it gets saved with all these awesome audio effects right here in your user library. And I have so many racks here. And this is another way to just save time, because instead of recreating the same processing rack every time, I'm able to shortcut that whole process and drop this one. If it doesn't sound good, I can drop in another rack or another rack. All this cool stuff that just saves you so much time and also helps you start building a signature sound. A lot of your signature sound will come from how you process your sounds, how they're all kind of glued together and everything like that. So by saving these default racks, you can start kind of curating that sound for yourself. Feature number 4 you need to be customizing is your keyboard shortcuts within your Ableton template. I don't know why more people don't do this, but I love it. Here's a few of my favorite ones. You'll see on my master, I have something called mono check. So that as I'm producing, if I just hit lowercase r, it'll turn this mono on. So I can check how everything sounds in mono. Super quick and easy. Another one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts is turning off my mastering rack and soloing my reference. I like this one because I'm constantly referencing my tracks to hear the mixes, low end, all that stuff, but this is going to my master, and I don't want to have my mastering rack hit a mastered track. So I created a shortcut, lowercase q, that solos my reference and turns off my mastering rack. We have some work to do on this one, but it makes it super quick and easy to reference and mix. And I have it go into my master so I can reference them both on a frequency visualizer like Voxengo Span. This is my favorite. This one's free. Super easy. My last keyboard shortcut I'll go through is to add locators. I love adding locators so I know where I'm at in the project. And for me, it's just lowercase t. Boom, locator, boom, locator. That's much easier to me rather than going here, create, add locator, boom. It saves me a little bit of time, but those little bits of time add up, and it just removes friction from the creative process, which is the whole goal of all this stuff. To create your keyboard shortcuts, all you have to do is right-click, edit key map, say I want M to turn on and off this overdrive. So I just hit M. After that, boom. That easy. Hey, so real quick, if you are a producer and you're looking to take your tracks to the next level, I think the most impactful thing you can do is to get a mentor, an experienced producer who can actually provide in-depth feedback on your specific music and the techniques and strategies you can use to take your tracks to the next level. And that's exactly why I started my Patreon community, to provide that customized, tailored feedback for their specific song, the same feedback I wish I had early on, and provide them with also the techniques and strategies that they can use to make their music sound much closer to their favorite artists. On top of that, I'm posting exclusive tutorials, sample packs, templates, all sorts of resources to just help you guys be more successful in music. So if you want to learn more about that, there's a link down below, but let's get back to it. All right, feature number 5, collections. I don't know why everyone sleeps on this feature. It's up here in the top right. This one's new in Ableton 11, but it allows you to create these groupings of plugins that I think is so useful. Essentially a favorites folder, and you can organize this any way you want, but I'll show you how I do it, and maybe you can use that as a starting point for your own organization. First, I have EQ, filters, and utilities. This one's pretty self-explanatory. EQs, filters, gates, stuff like that. Next, I have dynamics. These are things like compressors, limiters, all that good stuff. Next is harmonics. These are ones like the saturation, distortion, all that stuff to give to change the character of the sound. Next is instruments. These are any type of instruments I'll throw on a MIDI rack, my most commonly used ones. Next is space. These are reverbs, delays, things like that. Next we have stereo imaging. These are any plugins I'll use to widen or narrow or just manage the stereo image of the track. Now finally we have samples. These are all my favorite samples or MIDI clips I've heard lately that I want to use as a point or a starting point for inspiration in the future. If you want to add a plugin, instrument, audio effect, whatever it is to your favorites, all you have to do is right click it and then select where you want to add it. And to rename these, you can just kind of double click in them or right click. Now these are useful because it allows me to see my favorite plugins way more quickly. If I'm looking for a plugin to add to change the harmonics of my sound, I'd much rather look at a list of like 10 of my favorite and most commonly used plugins rather than a giant list of just every plugin I've ever bought. All right, finally, feature number 6 is places. These are these folders over here on the left, and I don't see enough people customizing these. I'll show you some of my favorite folders and things I think you definitely should be doing as a producer. Number 1 is creating your own sample pack. I'll be honest with you guys, when I started creating my own sample pack and really collecting and organizing all my favorite sounds, that's exactly when I started to get my records signed by big labels, and that's when I started to develop my signature sound. Because what you're doing is you're like a painter, collecting all your favorite shades and tones and paints and all this stuff, and you're using that to create your signature look, or in this case, a signature sound. So I think all of you should be working on collecting and organizing your own sample pack with all of your favorite sounds that you're currently really inspired by, and that will really help drive the production process forward, I promise. You see mine here, I have basses, drums, effects, synths, vocals, all this good stuff, all these cool mysterious sounding basses and shit, you know? I also have one for new sample packs that I just got recently that I want to go through. I have one for all my splice samples. I have one for all these channels I want to use later where I can just drag them right into my project. I have my DJ library. These are all the tracks I recently put on my USB to DJ, but now I have them in Ableton here as a reference. So if I'm inspired by one, I can just drag it right in here and then begin to learn from it. I also have my sound design library. These are all these cool sounds I've created. I just have them right at my fingertips. I also have all these cool MIDI configurations I've collected over time. I have my favorite Ableton racks. I have a bunch of racks I've created, my favorite swings I use, and much more stuff. So I definitely recommend you guys take the time to use these folders to your advantage. Use them as a way to organize these little pieces of audio or clips or whatever it is that you frequently use in your project rather than opening a whole Finder or whatever and searching for it outside of Ableton. And that's it, my friends. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Once again, if you want to grab the template that I use to start all my projects, link down below in the description, you can get that. But otherwise, just want to say thank you for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you next time. Adios.